100 years since the Seneca Falls Quintet, 175 years. Emily, as you all know, stood for early money is like yeast, past and present, which she taught candidates to consider circles of influence. We could call Ellen one of our earliest influencers. So women members, there were 12 of us, including Barbara Kennelly, Barbara Boxer, we've seen on screen, In 1987, before she would agree to run, what sustains good public policy were a determinative factor for having the strategic insight to leading the charge for our House Democrats and candidates at the DCCC.
And she told me I was too old for office. Anyway, and live from Times Square, it's That Kevin Show.
Somewhere in the bowels of the city that never sleeps,
Kevin McCullough, radio host with Salem Media,
is a man also not sleeping.
Syndicated radio talk show host Kevin McCullough.
And that guy would like a word with you.
Many of you know him as Votes-for-Damas.
Of course that Kevin show is going to be great. The only thing that could be greater, of course, would be that Donald show. We don't have that, so we have that Kevin show.
Featuring the music of Dick Tunney and the Dream in Color Orchestra. Straight ahead, universal injunctions, big, beautiful bills, and charter schools. Paul Larkin, Gabby Hoffman, and Erica Donalds all join us. What comedian is coming to Brooklyn June 12th, and you should come as well? Taylor Mason, here to discuss. Sketch comedy from the aforementioned Taylor, Not a Parody and Al Berry, and returning Michael W. Smith to the spotlight. And now from Times Square, where even the guy selling knockoff sunglasses isn't dumb enough to post a hit on Instagram, here's the Kevin. I am reminded at times when I see the headlines that have come out of this hugely successful week for the administration, and you see Pelosi, who has a hard time saying content. We tried to make content on the social. We call it content. When you see AOC, who's literally like, if Tom Homan thinks that we're going to stand for him arresting people who break the law while we're trying to protest, I mean, what's the point of protesting if you can't break the law while you're protesting? This is what we got this week. Someone going after Kristi Noem on the border issue. Eric Swalwell. Hi, I'll sleep with Chinese spies, please. I'm Eric Swalwell. And who was it that went after RFK Jr.? There was someone. Oh, it was Patty Murray from Washington. Well, if you think that you're just going to come in here and make us healthy, you can't make us be healthy. If we want to be obese, diabetic monsters for the rest of our lives, you can't stop us. That was the all-star card this week that the Democrats played. Drunk Pelosi, confused AOC, and angry Patty Murray and Eric Swalwell, who, let's be honest, he was probably hitting on Kristi Noem. I mean, that's probably, wasn't he married when he slept with the Chinese spy? Okay, well, anyway, so that's what you got this week from them. Meanwhile, what's the president doing? Let's sign a $1.5 trillion deal with the Saudis. Let's add $700 billion more from a couple of other countries and go home and call it a day. So I understand when your team is losing that badly, why you might be inclined to not want your opponent to succeed. I understand the frustration with that. Doesn't make it right.
But with the Democrats right now, and it really is a uniquely Democrat problem. This is not a problem that Republicans have, and I am bipartisan in my criticism. If the Republicans are really messing something up, I'm going to say like the one committee that didn't get the big beautiful bill out of its committee this week. All the other committees did. What was that one committee's problem? I will go after the ones that are not behaving well, but the Democrats in general are putting a field on the team who are on one hand drunk. I'm Nancy Pelosi. Or their FBI director, Mr. Comey, who is doing literal death threats in the shell messages that, quote, washed up on shore while he was doing his morning jog. And we're supposed to sit back and in some suspension of belief, we're supposed to sit back and think, oh, well, maybe he didn't really mean it. And he comes out and says, well, I never imagined that 86 could mean killing someone. Really? You ran the FBI, dude. You never heard of mafioso trying to 86 their guys, or a gang member wanting to 86 the guy from the other gang? Or you've never heard that as the head of the FBI, looking into cases far and wide. Maybe you didn't. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe when you were on the job, maybe you weren't doing the job. Maybe Mr. Comey was just a big fat fraud from the beginning. Maybe he didn't really. Well, we know, for example, hear me out on this. We know, for example, that when he took a look at Hillary's emails, the 33,000 that were all confidential, highly sensitive, we know that when he looked at that, he went, well, there's not a prosecutor in the country that would prosecute this. Really? Let me suggest a few. I could point you, maybe not Alvin Bragg, no. But there are some there's some honest prosecutors left in the country, and I'll guarantee you if they looked at it and said, oh, she mishandled and was leaving confidential information just laying around on a hard drive in a shower stall in Colorado somewhere. In all honesty, James Comey has been for a long time. I don't think necessarily been doing that swell of a job. And he's also the one that put the wiretaps in at the Trump residence during the campaign. Do you remember that? He wiretapped a candidate for president because of Russia, which we know was fake because James Comey's buddies faked it. It was just, random stuff that Mr. Steele put together for him, who had been disgraced. And it wasn't until Trump was gone and we had done all the back research on this that we find out with hard evidence that Jim Comey was one of the biggest liars that ever served. And he served in one of the most sensitive positions that there ever could have been. And so when he comes this week and says 86-47, 47, maybe that's the president. Maybe I knew it was the president. Maybe I don't know. Maybe, but 86. I had no. I'm James Comey. I'm quiet, retired guy. I didn't know that 86 was the code for killing people. If the Department of Justice and Homeland Security and the Secret Service don't press charges against James Comey, you're going to see me lose my mind. This man is not a patriot. He is someone who undermines his country. He's not someone who believes that the people had a say twice to get to elect the president that they now have. He's someone who thinks he's smarter than everybody and thinks that president should be undermined. To the degree that he kept notes and wrote memos and did all kinds of things that he did with President Trump in the very short stint he had as President Trump's director of the FBI, that he would never have done to any other president. He has some sort of new book out this week, and I'm sure he thought, oh, if I could just create some sort of like stir, maybe boost my book sales. He doesn't deserve a security clearance. He doesn't deserve status within the FBI's history. He doesn't deserve any kind of accolade that he may think that he's deserving, because he's betrayed his country every time it parted ways with his partisan viewpoint. And this week, he called for the assassination of the president, and he needs to be charged for that. Kevin McCullough, huge show straight ahead. Don't go anywhere. It's big. It's enormous, I promise you. Welcome back to That Kevin Show, thatkevinshow.com, That Kevin Show on all social media, and we are thrilled to have you here. If you use email, it's thatkevinshow@gmail.com. If you use email. Does anybody use email? I text everything now. I don't know. Anyway, something else that's been happening a lot of since the Trump team has been back in office is you've seen these district courts. I've written about them on townhall.com. These little judges that think they're high and mighty, sword-wielding heroes saving the planet from what? Not exactly sure, but they think that they are. But is it even constitutional? That's what the Supreme Court is set to weigh in on and to decide once and for all if these guys can do what they've been trying to do, which is to stop everything that the voters wanted to have happen in the election of 2024. Here to discuss is Paul Larkin from the Heritage Foundation. He's one of their brilliant legal minds over there. Paul, thank you for taking time to do this. What is the court going to hear specifically?
There are several cases arising from different district courts involving the issue of whether someone who is born in the United States automatically becomes a citizen. The district court in each case ruled in favor of the applicant and against the Trump administration, and issued an injunction that applied beyond the specific parties in that case that purported to bind the Trump administration on a nationwide basis. These have come to be known as nationwide injunctions. Essentially, any district court, and there are hundreds of them across the nation, has in the past issued an injunction that halts the change in policies by a new administration. It's a phenomenon that essentially began when Bush Jr. was the president.
So I have a big question on this, which is how can these judges who oversee a district, which is defined geographically, if my understanding is correct, they have a constrained area of space that is their jurisdiction. What gives them the right to judge anything that goes beyond that?
Well, it's one of those matters where there was a norm that had developed based on the common law and American law, and judges have just transgressed on that norm. I mean, the term nationwide injunction is a bit of a misnomer. If you sue the federal government and win, you are entitled to the benefit of that judgment across the United States. If you move from New York to Alaska, you can enforce the judgment there. So any judgment in favor of an individual is a nationwide judgment and therefore can result in a nationwide injunction. What happened is judges got so used to just deciding that a particular governmental institution had acted improperly that they decided not to enjoin just a particular prison or a prison system or not just a particular agency. They enjoin the entire government. There's no statute that authorizes it. It's merely just a practice that has developed at the behest of plaintiffs' lawyers.
So here you have judges that are unelected, unaccountable to the people, in other words, enforcing through a practice that is unlegislated, enforcing injunctions that are unverifiable as to whether or not they are legally binding. No wonder the American people are outraged when an administration comes to power on a campaign that says we are going to do X, and the people that perceive themselves to be the ones losing out on whatever that campaign policy is goes and shops a judge, and I think that's happening because you're seeing several of these judges get more than one case being sent their way, and it's kind of the usual suspects sending them their way. They're court shopping, they're judge shopping to try to subvert the actual will of the people.
No, you're absolutely right. You could probably throw in a little additional number of uns, as in unelected, unaccountable, and the like, to your list. It has created a tremendous problem, and ironically for both administrations, both Republican administrations and Democratic administrations. People on the right sued President Biden, and they sued President Obama. So it's not limited just to President Trump, either now or in his earlier term. But what it does is it's a bunch of district court judges trying to act like the Supreme Court. When the Supreme Court issues a decision, it applies nationwide. By definition, that's why the Constitution created a Supreme Court. The Constitution didn't create district court judges, and Congress hasn't empowered them to bind the government across the nation. In fact, the Supreme Court has held in an earlier case called Mendoza that when the government loses a case, it's not bound across the nation by that one loss. And these judges have just been ignoring that Supreme Court case.
So the big court's going to take this up, and there's going to be a ruling on it, I'm sure. But what should, in terms, and I know that this is a practice that's just kind of, well, someone did it, and then someone else did it, and so they've just been doing it. So everybody's always been doing it, so they just do it. I know that's where we're at. But what should be the standard legal procedure for something that comes before one of these judges? How would it normally, what would the operating norm look like?
Okay. The appropriate norm should be that you give complete relief to the parties in the case. If there is one party, that particular John or Jane Doe gets whatever relief is necessary to make him or her whole. But you don't go through and enter an injunction that applies to John or Jane Doe's A1 through A infinity. Unless, and there's one exception, and that's if the district court judge certifies a nationwide class. Because then what the judge and the parties have essentially said is, this is the case that will settle the law for the nation. But unless you have certified a class, and it's not easy to do so because every plaintiff has to have the same claim, unless you've certified a class, you should never be able to enter an injunction that allows non-parties to tell the government what to do.
Okay, having explained that to us, because I do quite a bit of broadcasting with attorneys, and when the Trump administration more or less yawned at Judge Boasberg's initial finding, they got very offended by it and said, how dare he defy a judge? Not that once the plane was in the air, you could really compel anybody to do anything at that point. They were going to El Salvador, and it was, out of our control. But to what degree is the chief executive bound by these unelected, unaccountable, kind of false injunctions that get put upon them? Well,
there's a difference between the questions to what extent they're bound and to what extent they should pay respect. Part of the reason that the Trump administration felt that Judge Boasberg acted incorrectly was that the plaintiffs in that case were seeking relief from custody. That type of relief can only be entered in a habeas corpus action. And that action has to be brought in the district where someone is confined, right, which in that person's case was either Texas or Louisiana. The plaintiffs didn't bring the case in Texas or Louisiana. They brought it in D.C. Why? They thought they had a better chance of getting a favorable judge in D.C. than they would in the other jurisdictions.
Well, and on that point, the Supreme Court slapped them down big, but then even the Supreme Court came back and paused the administration and said, you got to hold on. There's more of these cases coming. We're going to have to look at this at a bigger scale. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, no. What the Supreme Court said is we need to actually spend more than 10 minutes thinking about this issue, which is essentially what happens when you go up to them on an emergency basis. 10 minutes is an exaggeration, but they don't have the same time that they would if it was a case that was briefed and argued normally.
Paul Larkin of the Heritage Foundation, thank you for being with us.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Kevin McCullough coming right back from Times Square. Don't go away.
Stick around for more of That Kevin. Next, That Kevin Show with Kevin McCullough. Here he is from New York. That Kevin
Welcome
McCullough.
back to Times Square. That Kevin Show. Glad to have you with us. ThatKevinShow.com. That Kevin Show on all social media. And ThatKevinShow@gmail.com if you want to drop me a note. My next guest is the director for the Center for Energy and Conservation at the Independent Women's Forum. Her name is Gabriella Hoffman, and she joins us on a regular basis. Gabby, it's good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Good to join you, Kevin. Thanks for having me today.
We finally recently just got the House to cough up its final language on the big, beautiful bill reconciliation side of the package. Both houses have technically agreed to kind of the big, large framework of everything, but they are now, going to kibitz about the tiny details in the bill. From an energy perspective, have we made progress from where we were?
We have made some progress. The takeaway, what your listeners have to preen from the analysis of what happened with markup. There are lots of committees covering a lot of green funding from the Biden administration. It's discretionary spending. So anything that pertains to laws, and especially the disbursements of IRA green subsidy money, is what is largely being deliberated and debated. And so what has happened, we've seen reconciliation bills from House Natural Resources Committee, Energy and Commerce, and Ways and Means. As it pertains to the subsidies themselves, Ways and Means is where the action happened this past week, the last few days. So what we can preen initially from the deliberations that happened in Ways and Means, in terms of a percentage of cutting of green subsidies from the last administration, from this very misleading named bill, the Green New Deal Light is more accurate to describe. Republicans were able to get about 60% of cuts, savings across 10 years, $515 billion. But that's a little bit under the now adjusted forecast of what green subsidies in totality would cost across a 10-year timeframe and even by 2050. So we are not seeing full repeal quite yet. I'm not sure if we're going to get it because the Senate, unfortunately, seems to want to keep some of the IRA green subsidies, even though no Republican cast a single vote for it. So I'm a little disappointed by how much they've cut so far. It doesn't really go to the meat of attacking the incentive tax credits and the production tax credits, which really artificially prop up mature industries like solar and wind, which don't need to have subsidies anymore if they can credibly compete. So we didn't really see much of attacking of that, unfortunately. Maybe they're going to have further deliberations to achieve some more cuts, but we are not seeing full repeal right now, unfortunately.
What's the rationale for us to continue to pay taxes to keep solar panel companies and windmill blade companies making the things that aren't really working? Because we've talked about this. Solar and wind, kind of nice ideas. I'm pro energy, so we need all forms of energy going forward in terms of how I think about it. But if you just try to power the world on solar and wind, it's trying to power the human body on just iceberg lettuce. It'll work for a little while, but it's not really going to get you where you need to go. Why are we still subsidizing those?
It's not even just those. We even see some Republicans, especially from the Senate side, saying we're going to even clamp down on what you've been able to cut. House Republicans, they have said, well, we need these subsidies to help with reliable energy sources like geothermal, advanced nuclear, and even natural gas. When you know how subsidies operate, subsidies favor bigger companies that can't really compete without government subsidies. So it's going to advantage a lot of government preferred, perhaps in red district businesses that otherwise could not compete without the subsidies. So they're even kind of sullying potential technologies that are going to be needed to power this great electricity demand we're seeing. As you mentioned, solar and wind can't cut it because they're intermittent and they only work for a fraction of the year. Geothermal, nuclear, natural gas work 70 to 90% of the year. And unfortunately, I worry, as someone who supports the free market and supports energy innovation, you shackle these emerging technologies, or these promising technologies with subsidies, it dooms them from being fully catalyzed. And having the government pick winners and losers, as some in Congress want to do, is not the path we want to take. The Trump administration has said, we don't want to pick winners and losers. We want the market to determine what is abundant, reliable, and secure. And the market is moving away from unreliable technologies. You see some debate over whether or not there should be some subsidies awarded to nuclear, geothermal, and the like. But unfortunately, these subsidies are not going to help these technologies go online more. It really has to be unburdened by red tape. We have to see the market really inject some more money, billions and trillions of dollars in private capital investment. And that's how you're going to see these technologies really be unleashed. But if you keep it with subsidies, it dooms them. It only favors certain companies over others that might be more promising.
I'm not a big fan of picking winners and losers, and so I appreciate the fact that they're making headway. But I would strongly encourage you, friends, to contact your congressman and your senator, 202-224-3121. Memorize that phone number. It's the Capitol switchboard. Call it in your sleep, 202-224-3121, and ask them to get rid of all of the subsidies in the big, beautiful bill.
Stick around for more of That Kevin. Next, That Kevin Show with Kevin McCullough. From New York, That Kevin McCullough.
Welcome back. Kevin McCullough, glad to have you with us. It is That Kevin Show, thatkevinshow.com, if you want to know anything more about what we are doing with the podcasts, with the archives. Join the newsletter. There's all kinds of fun stuff on there. You can join all the social media. But thatkevinshow.com is where that's all located at. I want to take just a second here to remind you that we are in the process this year of trying to liberate 208 individual women who have had their freedom and their lives stolen from them. They were taken as captives during the Sudan Civil War a number of years ago, and for these number of years since, they have been held captive as slaves by Arab slave masters in the north of what used to be the unified Sudan. Now it's northern Sudan. And in that country, these Arab masters paid no price for humiliating, degrading, taking, beating, sexually assaulting these women as slaves in that time period. And what Christian Solidarity International, my very good partners in this work, and we, the collective community of That Kevin Show over the last number of years have been able to do is actually liberate close to 5,000 of these human lives and set them free. And how it works is very simple. They have been living in abject, grotesque abuse. When one of the slave retrievers is able to find and locate where a slave is at, we're able to negotiate the freedom of that slave, and then once returning them to their home, be able to give them a brand new life by way of everything they need to start that life, including a micro-enterprise system whereby they can have the finances to support themselves, giving them shelter from bad weather, giving them food to eat and also food to plant so that they have more food to eat in the years to come. But your $250 gift literally gives a human slave everything they need to survive and start a brand new life all over again in their hometown, in their home area where they came from in South Sudan. And friends, for those who can't track family or find friends from their childhood when they were taken, we even have started now communities of former slaves that live together, sharing their common history, but now sharing their common joy in being grouped together in a living community. And it is a wonderful, amazing thing to see. $250, by the way, does that for them. It gives them everything they need. It gives them sorghum grain to eat for the coming year. It gives them a year's worth of sorghum seed to plant for a new crop of sorghum grain. But it also gives them things like cleaning utensils and gardening utensils and fishing utensils. It gives them things to protect them from the weather, tarps and blankets and other things to keep them appropriately warm or cool depending on the weather, and everything that they need along those lines. It also gives them, and this is kind of the fun part, it gives them a little baby she-goat. And that she-goat can turn into a mother that has many other little kid goats, and those kids can be sold, and thus giving that mom an ability to sustain her life and to grow her ability to live and even for her children. And friends, it is an amazing thing that all of this can be done for only $250. $250 wouldn't buy a year's worth of grain here, and it certainly wouldn't buy a goat worth its weight. So amazing that you are giving all of these things to this slave, this former slave. But more than anything, you're giving her her life back. You're giving her her decency back, her integrity. She's been verbally abused, physically beaten, sexually abused since she was taken into slavery. And if she ever spoke up, she ran the risk of being killed, or at least being brutalized to a much greater degree. We are doing God's work in doing this. Will you do it with us? Several of you have already given multi-slave gifts to help us get started. We have 12 that have been liberated of the 208, which leaves us what, with 196 to go for the year. You can help us now. 888-342-1010, 888-342-1010, or go to bringherhome.org, bringherhome.org. That's bringherhome.org, or 888-342-1010. This is the story of a book.
My name is Abuk, and this is my liberation story. As I crossed the border into South Sudan, I realized something big was changing for me. I don't remember how old I was when I was taken captive, and I'm unsure of how many years I spent in slavery. But I know that it was the longest season of my life. But in November of this year, that changed when I was able to go home. As a child, I was a Christian in South Sudan. When I became a slave, my master forced me to take a Muslim name and do things simply because I was not one of his own. My days in slavery were incredibly hard, working all day, endless chores, cleaning, cooking, tending to cattle, with almost nothing to eat for myself. All of which paled in comparison to the most traumatic day of my slavery, where, when fetching water from my slave master's family, I was brutally raped by an entire gang of Arab men. As I returned to South Sudan, I am now pregnant, carrying a child of my slave master. But despite that, I harbor no resentment toward my child. My hope for the future is to heal and rebuild and to become a good mother. And someday I would like to find any of my family if they still exist. Thank you for liberating me, and please don't stop until we get them all. My Christian name is Abuk Garanhani, and that's my liberation story.
Thank you to those of you who have already helped us liberate 12 of these precious souls this year. 196 names are still on our list, and we need your help. 888-342-1010, 888-342-1010. If you'd rather give online, it's pretty simple. Bringherhome.org, bringherhome.org, or 888-342-1010. But when you give, just know that you are setting a woman's heart and life and future free. So we ask that you would be as generous as you can. And 888-342-1010 or bringherhome.org.
Stick around for more of That Kevin. Next, That Kevin Show with Kevin McCullough.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the New Music Spotlight with a brand new one, Michael W. Smith.
Too heavy to hold, too deep to fathom, too bright to behold. I wrestled with the angel, and the angel changed my name.
Michael W. Smith, brand new music from a longtime artist, and Arms Around the Sun. Kevin McCullough on your weekend, That Kevin Show. We've got a big hour 2 straight ahead. Don't change that dial.
Perry, Donald Trump is going to reduce drug prices by up to 80%. If he does this, Big Pharma won't be able to pay all of Congress to fly in private jets, which means I'll be forced to wait in line at United Airlines, and I have no time for that. That's why I need you to fly me to DC in your spaceship.
Of course, Bernie. I'm Captain Perry. I use the power of love to learn science.
Did you remember to check the turbo pumps, Captain Perry?
The turbo pumps? They're painted blue and on the bottom of the rocket, and I love them.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Sorry, Bernie. It's probably safer to just take a Gulfstream jet. Good thinking. Private jets are really the only way to fly.
Donald, if you cut Big Pharma's profits, every member of Congress will be forced to travel like peasants.
Sorry I'm late. I got hungry on the way here and only had time to stop for a 13-course meal at the 5-star restaurant.
That's all right, Bernie. Donald, I know we've had our differences, but please don't go after Big Pharma. I cannot go back to flying coach. Guys, there's nothing you can do to stop me. Since you've all been pretending to go after Big Pharma for years, I thought it would be really funny to actually do it.
This won't work, Donald. No one on planet Earth has enough influence to stop Big Pharma.
That's not true, Bernie. I am Histrelin, leader of the non-binaries from the planet Endopharma. My pronouns are she, schmops. This executive order must go through. You see, my species depends on puberty blockers to survive. If a non-binary hits puberty, they die. Years ago, our planet ran out of these essential drugs, so we depend on Earth's endless supply, but they're getting expensive. Lowering the price of pharmaceuticals means puberty blockers will be cheap again, literally saving every non-binary. As someone who is 1/1000th non-binary, I sympathize with you, but I will not be forced to throw away liquids above 3 ounces every time I fly.
Somewhere in the bowels of the city that never sleeps,
Kevin McCullough, radio host with Salem Media,
is a man also not sleeping.
Syndicated radio talk show host Kevin McCullough.
And that guy would like a word with you.
Many of you know him from as Votes
Of course that Kevin show is going to be great. The only thing that could be greater, of course, would be that Donald show. We don't have that, so we have that Kevin show.
Featuring the music of Dick Tunney and the Dream in Color Orchestra. Still true, pal. She's charting a new path for education, Erica Donalds. And what comedian should you come see on June 12th in Brooklyn? Taylor Mason. Sketch comedy from Not a Parody, Al Berry and Taylor Mason. And back in the spotlight, it's Mr. Grammy and Dove himself, Michael W. Smith. And now from Times Square, where the only thing falling faster than CNN streaming numbers is Bill Belichick's Tinder app age range. Here's He does like the youngins, doesn't he? Like the sunshine. Yep, I think he does. Anyway, time to get to some news. Here we go.
For Assignment Desk Weekend, I'm Kevin McCullough. Happy weekend, America, where the FBI used to investigate crimes, but now former members just dabble in cryptic Instagram threats and fan fiction murder plots. Let's start with the big headline. Former FBI Director James 88 Keys Comey posted the number 8647 to his social feed this week, causing the left to say, it's just math. And the rest of us to say, are we really doing mob code on Instagram now? Because nothing screams national security professional quite like dropping a hit order disguised as an escape room puzzle. Comey insists it's not a threat, just a random number, he says, kind of like how his entire Russia investigation was based on random gossip with some guy named Steele with a vivid imagination in a Word document. Tulsi Gabbard, who was once a Democrat but recently defected to the I Still Have a Soul party, said Comey should be behind bars, which is ironic considering Trump was almost behind bars because of Comey's previous service. Meanwhile, Democrats are busy auditioning for Snapped DC edition. President Trump is out doing boring things like signing peace deals and economic arrangements and so forth. Three Middle East nations this week. No biggie. Just Trump solving 3,000-year problems that eluded kings and popes and sultans and every American president with a Harvard degree and a drone strike fetish. But don't expect the media to cover it fairly. They're too busy listening to 22-year-old protesters at anti-Trump rallies who believe the ideal America includes free college, free rent, no cops, and most importantly, a 6-month sabbatical every time they're ghosted on Tinder. Meanwhile, over in sports world, Major League Baseball still hasn't let Pete Rose into the Hall of Fame. Why? Because he bet on some games, which is apparently more offensive to the sport than juicing your veins with old horse hormones or beating your wife on a ring cam. One old school Reds announcer finally said what everyone's been thinking. You're telling me the guy with 4,256 hits is somehow less worthy than Barry? I swear it's just creatine bonds. And just when you thought 2025 couldn't be weirder, Bill Belichick, 6-time Super Bowl champ and 5-time grandpa, is dating a 24-year-old former pageant queen who lost this week, and philosophy major. He's 72, she's 24. Critics say it's creepy, but let's be honest. He probably thinks she's a spy from Clemson and just wants to keep her close. I'm sure that's it. But there is still good in the world, folks. President Trump saw a viral TikTok from a World War II vet turning 104, and he sent him a personal birthday message. And say what you want about Trump, but he's class. While Biden would have sent the man a pudding cup, Kamala would have given him a word salad about the passage of time. It relates to time. So to recap, Trump is signing peace treaties. The FBI is play acting as mobsters. Protesters want socialism with their oat milk. Pete Rose is still banned. Bill Belichick is dating someone who thinks MySpace is ancient history. And the most heartfelt moment of the week came from TikTok, Donald Trump and a World War II hero. America 2025. Come for the chaos. Stay for the dark comedy. For Assignment Desk Weekend, I'm Kevin McCullough.
I'm driving here tonight. I drive a smart car. Oh, I thought it was a stroller, okay? I had picked it up, I looked underneath it, it didn't really fold, but I was like, what the heck, It is made for a baby, and every time I drive it, I want to cry, so I get cut off by a guy in a Hummer. Oh my gosh, Hummer stroller, Hummer smart car. How smart can that? Listen, I tried to make the smart car as smart as possible. I got some smart water, and I filled up the tank with smart water in the smart car, and sure enough, it drove me right to the library. I was like, oh, okay, great. So this Hummer cuts me off. I'm in a smart car. He could turn on his windshield wiper and jettison me across the parking lot. A bug has better chances than a smart car against a Hummer. But this is my point. The guy, then he cuts off the stereotype. The little old lady in the 1998 Malibu can't see over the dashboard, can't see the hood ornament, but I can still drive. Okay, so I'm following Hummer Boy. I'm so glad I can get this off my mind. He pulled into a handicapped parking spot. Yes, handicapped. He jumps out of the Hummer. What is that, 60 feet? He parachutes. He rappels down the side of the Hummer. And then he runs, handicapped parking spot. He runs, and I wrote him a note. I'm so pleased I was livid. Dear sir, if you take a disabled person's parking spot, then you better also take their disability. Took me an hour and a half to write that with the edge of my key in the hood of the Hummer. Because somebody has to stand for the right things. Everybody's stressed out. Everybody's mad all the time. I'm at the hotel. They're having an anger management conference. I peeked in. You know who was there? The whole country. I was like, You got to really, I go to the gym. I'm a gym guy. I am a gym guy. I hate the gym, but I go to the gym. And here's a great example of people not being able to treat. I'm on the treadmill at the gym, just doing my thing on the treadmill. And some sicko have left a water bottle in the Pringles holder. Now, what am I supposed to do with that? Some of these people, some of these people need to, you want to tell people, look, dude, you're done. Okay, you cannot attain more mass. Oh, my earlobes need to be buff, oh my gosh. I joined this gym and the kid was like, what do you want from a workout? I said, man, I've been working out my whole life. I want a challenge. He said, just try to get out of our contract. Oh my gosh. You need a lawyer to get out of those things, boy. I don't know. We're all stressed out. Challenges are good, I think. A challenge thing is good. I've been challenged my entire life. I haven't had any physical. I've been very blessed. Let's put it that way. Okay, although I will say this. When I was a senior in high school, talk about a challenge. My counselor said to me, Taylor, what do you want to do with your life? And I told him the truth. I said, I want to be a ventriloquist. And that's exactly the response. That is exactly the response that I got from him. He just sat there and stared at me for a couple of moments before he said, are you serious, man? Nobody likes ventriloquists.
Ready or not, we'll be right back. That Kevin. Back to That Kevin Show with Kevin McCullough.
Welcome back to That Kevin Show from Times Square, thatkevinshow.com, That Kevin Show, all social media, and thatkevinshow@gmail.com if you still use email. Some people don't, some people do. I don't use it a lot. I get more of it than I want. I'll read it, I promise. Anyway, speaking of reading, education is one of the most important things we talk about on this show. And in recent days, a very bizarre case just had arguments heard before the Supreme Court. And here to discuss is Erica Donalds, who has done many things on the educational front, but she's also the probably future First Lady of the state of Florida. So we're very honored to have her. Erica, welcome back. It's good to see you. I was not familiar with the details of this case, and I don't think a lot of people have been, especially in the mainstream, even have knowledge of what was argued on the 30th of April before SCOTUS. But what was argued there, and tell us a little bit about the players involved.
Sure. This is known as the Drummond case, and it's actually a case about religious charter schools. In Oklahoma, the statewide charter school board approved a religiously affiliated virtual charter school, St. Isidore, with outstanding academic achievement, met all of the other requirements. But the controversial part, of course, is that it's a Catholic school. The Attorney General in Oklahoma said that was not allowed because public schools cannot be religious schools and charter schools are treated as public schools. However, a charter is just a contract with the government to provide school to public school children, education to public school children. And the Supreme Court has previously ruled that the government cannot discriminate in widely available contracts simply because of religious affiliation. So that is why this made it all the way to the Supreme Court.
And sadly, the Attorney General that is doing this is a Republican. But I will tell you, Erica, as someone who grew up in North Texas, the Dallas-Fort Worth area, the people that are pro-public education in that part of the world, at least throughout the entirety of my childhood into high school and college years, they had a very big union kind of view towards education. So they really believe that public educators are kind of almost saints, if you will, and that people that want to do homeschool and private school and Christian school, the rest, they're kind of like noobs that need to be, brushed off to the backwoods from which they came. I don't know if that kind of mentality still holds in that part of the country. It did heavily when I was growing up. But I will say the idea that a Republican could oppose something as what seems to be as straightforward as what you just explained is very disheartening given the current trend across the country and what you're doing by way of getting back to fundamentals.
Well, and the wave of school choice and parental rights in this country, including in the state of Oklahoma and Texas, as you said, it is so strong that this momentum is not going to be stopped by cases like this. And Republicans like that, who a lot of rural Republicans that have been blocking school choice in states like Texas and Oklahoma for a long time, really propping up the government monopoly and at the lack of benefit, if you will, to parents and their students. St. Isidore, this Catholic institution that wants to charter a virtual school in Oklahoma, has 100% graduation rate and 98% college acceptance, simply because they also are of the Catholic faith. Should not exclude them from a charter contract that makes it available to parents. Doesn't require parents to participate in the Catholic faith or even to attend that school, but it does make it an option for them as a charter in Oklahoma, which is why myself and all of the organizations that are pro-school choice in this country fighting for parents were there in front of the Supreme Court to rally in support of the Oklahoma Charter School Board.
Well, that's why it doesn't make any sense, because charter schools have been proven to be extremely effective. In fact, if you took the charter school performance out of the New York City public school system, you'd have even worse numbers than you have in terms of what we're turning out here. And it's really, really bad. I remember one year when Mayor Bloomberg was very, very happy because he had gotten, I think it was on par reading rate to grade level at 70%. And you're like, that's good. We should be much higher than that. But in this situation, if the government can't prejudice a contract due to religious affiliation, then this should be a non-starter. Do you think it's going to be a difficult one for the justices to determine?
I really don't. I think it's very cut and dry. I listened to the oral arguments after the rally and heard some of the same arguments that we've heard in previous cases, where if that precedent holds, this is not technically a public school. So the argument from the Attorney General is that this is a public entity, but a charter school, if people don't know, is actually an independent nonprofit with its own independent board that exists as a contract with the government. So just like the case previous where the Supreme Court ruled that if it was a religiously affiliated daycare, that they could not be excluded from a widely available Head Start funding program, for example, then this holds true as well. This is a widely available charter school program. And the only thing that stopped Oklahoma from giving a charter, or for the Attorney General's case, is that this is religiously affiliated. And that cannot happen. And I do think it has wide-ranging impacts once this decision comes out in June for places like New York, where you may see religiously affiliated schools who have academic performance that would meet the criteria come and look for a charter from the state of New York.
Well, and you may have wholly different fights there, because if the state is unwilling to grant the charter, from the get-go, this was clearly granted by the Charter School Board of the state of Oklahoma and then reneged upon by the Attorney General, which again, as a Republican, it seems like a head scratcher. I'm kind of thinking he or she doesn't know what party what team they're on, and they need to be on the team that they're on. Let's talk just for a second, because in your position with America First Policy Institute, you kind of spearhead the educational work there. What do we know about the success of charter schools by way of effectiveness, even in really tough areas like Chicago and Detroit and New York and some of those places?
Sure. Across the board, charter schools have outperformed their traditional public school counterparts with the same demographics of students, especially students of low income and minority communities and urban communities. Florida is one state that puts out a report every year showing the outperformance of charters versus traditional public schools. And they literally outperform at every demographic, in every grade level, in every subject area, about 99% of the time. We also see, however, with studies about school choice options, that in 27 different studies, when school choice exists in a community, whether that's charter schools or private school choice, all of the performance of students in that community go up if the student goes to a school of choice, as well as if the student stays in the traditional public school in that community. Those scores are going up too. We know that competition is something that drives excellence across the board.
Well, that's the thing. The public school gets on its game because they're afraid they're going to lose the funding per student. Every little fanny in a seat matters to them because of what they get from the state based on that. Erica Donalds, thank you for stopping by and for enlightening us on all of this. We really appreciate your efforts.
Thanks for having me, as always.
You got it. Kevin McCullough coming back from Times Square. Welcome back to Times Square. Kevin McCullough, very glad to have you with us, and so thankful that I get to do this, to be able to chat with you about the most important stories of the week and have a little fun along the way, enjoy some good comedy, enjoy some good music, but really kind of narrow down on the biggest issues that we face. And one of the things that I do at this show is I use, I tithe it back to God. If that sounds a little weird to you, what I mean by that is I use a portion of what I do by way of airtime that's quite costly to do something that I feel like he wants me to do. And for the, 170th time in as many years, we are assisting the efforts of Christian Solidarity International in liberating human slaves. Now, you may be saying to yourself, Kev, I don't think there's slavery going on planet Earth. But if you were to say that, you would be historically misguided, because there's more slaves on the planet right now than ever before in human history. And what Christian Solidarity International has been doing with our help and working together over the last number of years is getting freedom for those who are in slavery, and once out, giving them a brand new life. The slaves that we're helping in particular happen to be spoils of war, women that were taken as captive in the Sudan Civil War, marched north by their Arab captors, enslaved in horrendous physical conditions, and then told basically that they had lost their life, that they weren't allowed to talk, to do anything that displeased the slave master, could immediately bring about beatings or worse. Most of them have been ritualistically sexually assaulted over time. And many of them have wondered, is there a God? Is there anyone who will hear our cry or come help us? And I have to say, because of your faithfulness over the last number of years, we have seen just a shade under 5,000 human beings liberated and given a brand new future. And it's been so rewarding to be a part of that. The number is 888-342-1010, 888-342-1010, or bringherhome.org. Our goal this year is to help liberate another 208, and thanks to your efforts thus far, we have made some good headway on that. 12 have been liberated thus far, but we have a long way to go to hit that goal. So would you help us right now? In the meantime, I want you to have an understanding of the type of person that you're helping. Listen to Abuk's liberation story.
My name is Abuk, and this is my liberation story. As I crossed the border into South Sudan, I realized something big was changing for me. I don't remember how old I was when I was taken captive, and I'm unsure of how many years I spent in slavery. but I know that it was the longest season of my life. But in November of this year, 2023, that changed when I was able to go home. As a child, I was a Christian in South Sudan. When I became a slave, my master forced me to take in Muslim name and do things simply because I was not one of his own. My days in slavery were incredibly hard, working all day, endless chores, cleaning, cooking, tending to cattle, with almost nothing to eat for myself. All of which paled in comparison to the most traumatic day of my slavery, where, when fetching water from my slave master's family, I was brutally raped by an entire gang of Arab men. As I returned to South Sudan, I am now pregnant, carrying a child of my slave master. But despite that, I harbor no resentment toward my child. My hope for the future is to heal and rebuild and to become a good mother. And someday I would like to find any of my family if they still exist. Thank you for liberating me, and please don't stop until we get them all. My Christian name is Abuk Garang Ani, and that's my liberation story.
You can give another woman a liberation story by dialing 888-342-1010, 888-342-1010. Thank you to those of you who have already helped us liberate 12 women this year. Our goal is 208, so 196 to go. You can also give online at bringherhome.org, bringherhome.org, or 888-342-1010. But please go and make a difference and change a life and free a life right now.
Stick around for more of That Kevin. Next, That Kevin Show with Kevin McCullough. Here he is from New York. That Kevin McCullough.
Welcome back to Times Square. That Kevin Show, thatkevinshow.com, That Kevin Show, all social media. And if you use the antiquated dinosaur called email, you can do it at thatkevinshow@gmail.com. Taylor Mason is a comedian. He's been making people laugh for quite a while, and he does so with kind of a rebel's heart. He does it cleanly. It's unusual in the comedic world, but he does, and he's going to actually join me and several thousand of our best friends when we get together on June 12th here in New York with the Salem Media Group. But Taylor Mason, welcome to That Kevin Show.
Kevin, thanks so much for having me on today. Here we're actually, I live in New Jersey, across the river from where you are, I believe, in New York. And New Jersey, if you're not familiar, this is the only state in America where we use air freshener outdoors. And I've been spending a lot of time outdoors. I just put up screen windows on a 3-story house in a wind and rainstorm that was just, my ladder was basically doing the cha-cha as I tried to put these screens into the store windows. Man, I'm just so happy to be on the radio, just sitting in, or on TV, just sitting here in a room after what I just went through.
Did you look like Clark W. Griswold hanging from the gutter with the Christmas lights?
You have captured the moment perfectly. I had it on video because that would be so much funnier than anything I could possibly say.
Well,
yeah, I was shouting lots of words that are not in the Bible. Let me put it there.
You were your anger routine was not necessarily clean, but your comedy routine is.
Yes.
Let's talk about this a little bit. What made you desire to be a comedian?
Well, okay, first, we're going way back in time. So when I was a little boy, I had a lisp. Okay, and of course in radio, you cannot have a lisp because that you can't have a speech impediment that dramatic. And my father was a small-time farm news broadcaster out in the Midwest. So farm news, for our listeners, that's like saying he worked for Kodak, right? there is no farm news. And this drove my parents and my grandmother crazy that I could not pronounce the letter F. And what the real ripoff, Kevin, is they named the speech impediment with a word that has the letter that you cannot pronounce in the word itself. So that when anybody says, do you have a lisp? You are obviously forced to say, yes, I have a lisp, which drove people crazy until, you're getting bullied for this by guys. This is not unique to me in any way. How do you overcome that bullying? Well, my way to do that was to try and make the bullies laugh. So that is pretty much how I started this whole thing. I started as a ventriloquist because my grandmother, I'm dating myself now. My grandmother saw this lady on television named Sherry Lewis. Sherry Lewis was a ventriloquist. My family farms. Remember, my dad was a farm news broadcaster. My family farms. Sherry Lewis was on television. She had a sock on her hand. It was a farm animal named Lamb Chop. And the kicker is it pronounced the letter S perfectly. My grandmother, without a high school education, thought that if I learned how to do ventriloquism, i.e., speak without moving my lips, I would have to focus and concentrate and learn how to say the letter S correctly so I could talk without moving my lips. And here's what's wild about that. So in the decades since then, I've had speech therapists come up to me after programs or weeks after seeing me or after seeing me on television or on streaming video. I'll get these wild emails. We tried your idea of using ventriloquism, and not just for lisps, for other speech impediments. But what it does is it makes you, as the, for lack of a better word, performer, concentrate on saying those letters or pronouncing the words correctly so that your imaginary friend comes off maybe looking a little more intelligent or funnier than you are. So that is how I started. And that is what has drawn me to be on, that's Kevin, on the program here with you today and to be over in Brooklyn on July 12th with Salem Radio.
That's going to be incredible. Well, that's a great story. So you are kind of countercultural in the community.
Let's just talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
So I'm learning ventriloquism, and I don't want to date myself, buddy, but this is at a time when our culture, the United States, is going through mass counterculture upheaval. This is in the late 1960s. Okay, these are the riots over in Newark and Detroit. These are the demonstrations in Chicago during the Democratic National Convention. That's what's going on. Who's on the radio? The Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Sly and the Family Stone. And what am I? Motown is huge. What am I doing? I'm in a room with a sock trying to learn to say the letter S correctly. I mean, bro, counterculture, I define it.
There you go. Well, Taylor Mason is going to define some counterculture when he's with us at the pastors event in the New York tri-state region. If you're a listener to my daily show on WMCA AM 570 out of New York, you know that we reach a huge swath of people, and we're looking forward to having more than 1,000 of them with us on June 12th. And if anybody's watching this or listening to this and wants to come from anywhere in the country, just go to WMCA.com and reserve your seat. There's actually no entrance fee charged for this. It's just our way.
Amen.
Thank you. So, what are you writing about these days? What's the don't give us all of the punchlines, but what's some of the focuses of your comedy these days?
You know, I'm not real political. Okay, I don't rant. However, and I know I listen to the show. I know you follow the news. So Qatar just gave our President Trump
tried to
a Boeing airline.
Right.
Now, I don't know if you're familiar with what's happening with Boeing. This is not a political statement. Boeing has had some issues. Okay. If you combine that with the fact that people tried to assassinate President Trump and now a country is giving him a Boeing airline, do I have to spell it out? I mean, does that sound like another? I mean, am I being mean? Just asking you. You brought the question, where do I get my comedy? I don't know, bro. They're giving away a Boeing airline to the president. They tried to assassinate him already. I'm just telling you the truth.
Yeah.
Okay. Like you
Well,
said,
we appreciate truth tellers around these parts. Taylor Mason, thank you for your time. We look forward to seeing you in person on June 12th.
You're so kind. Thank you very much, Kevin.
You got it. Kevin McCullough, more info if you want to join us on WMCA.com. Coming right back from New York. Stay here.
Ready or not, he'll be right back. That Kevin.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to That Kevin Show. Final few minutes of this weekend's edition. He may have as many or more #1 hits of any artist ever featured on the New Music Spotlight. And last hour you heard his newest, Arms Around the Sun. Here's Michael W. Smith and Stars.
A million lights hanging on the world tonight. I see him reaching down, dancing on the evening tide. For you, all the stars are singing with you. Every day I'm feeling